I got a search warrant to go on an illegal dental operation. And we went and kicked the door in. And, when you serve a search warrant, when the police kick the door in, they holler, police. Well, I was being funny and I hollered, tooth cop. My boss was with me and she was not really impressed with that. Reminded me that was unprofessional. We agreed upon that. We also agreed that it was funny. So, but there you go. So the tooth cop was kind of born. And then 2 years later, when I started consulting, I thought, you know what? That's memorable. People are going to remember. They may forget my ugly face, but they're never going to forget my name. So I'm going to go with the tooth cop. And here I am.
Welcome to another episode of the Irreplaceable Dental Assistant. And as usual, I have a gem for you today. His name is Duane Tinker. Welcome, Duane. How are you doing today?
I'm so honored to be here. So thank you.
Well, I know a little bit about you, but could you share with our listeners and our viewers who this mysterious man is and why I would be talking about him today?
So my friends call me Tink. My last name is Tinker. So for years, people just started calling me Tink and it just stuck. But some people call me the tooth cop. And I used to investigate naughty dentists for a living. So true story.
So, I was going to ask you how you got the name Tooth Cop. Share a little bit more about that.
Well, it's a funny story.
Yes.
So when I applied for the job to go and work for the dental board back in 2009, I was blown away by the idea that Texas at that time used police officers to investigate dentists.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, are dentists really so bad they have to have their own police force? And, right. I was just being kind of funny about it. And I said, so I got the job, and the woman who became my boss, I'd worked on the street as a partner. She was a police officer. We were partners on the street at one point in time. Anyway, so when I got the job, I went down to Austin to get my equipment, and I needed to set up a password to get into the state programs.
Right.
And I said, I don't know, tooth cop? And it just kind of snowballed from there. So that was the first time. The second time, we went and served a search warrant.
Yes.
I got a search warrant to go on an illegal dental operation. And we went and kicked the door in. And, when you serve a search warrant, when the police kick the door in, they holler, police. Well, I was being funny and I hollered, tooth cop. My boss was with me and she was not really impressed with that. Reminded me that was unprofessional. We agreed upon that. We also agreed that it was funny. So, but there you go. So the tooth cop was kind of born. And then 2 years later, when I started consulting, I thought, you know what? That's memorable. People are going to remember. They may forget my ugly face, but they're never going to forget my name. So I'm going to go with the tooth cop. And here I am.
Well, I think that's one of the best decisions you could have ever made, because you are correct. None of my listeners will forget that story. They will remember the tooth cop.
It's funny because people forget the tooth cop. They like the tooth police and all the different variations of that. But they remember that guy. Yeah, it works. So
and that's what you want people to
it's
say.
All about branding.
That guy.
That's right. And you know what? It amazes me. It's always when a dentist is in trouble.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, that one guy, that tooth cop.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's easy to find me from there. So
yes. Yeah.
So
Mr. Tooth Cop, share with me, what is compliance and how does it relate to risk management? Because we hear these words being thrown around, but I'm not sure that my listeners fully understand what all of it means.
So I guess if I had some better foresight as I started my company, I might have given it a different name. it's funny coming from law enforcement. You think, well, I like rules. Actually, I hate rules. So the idea of compliance means I have to do something. And when you tell me I have to do something, I don't want to do it.
Right.
You tell me I can't do something, I want to do it. So that's me. So funny how I ended up going to law enforcement after that. But the idea of compliance is, wherever you are, whatever country you're in, there's rules and regulations that we have to follow. And if we don't, there are consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And those consequences, either they can be small consequences or they can be big consequences, such as losing your license and going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So I deal a lot with compliance, but I really spend a lot of my time working with people on managing their liability risks. Mm-hmm. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that's in the dentist or the patient's best interest for you to do or don't do that. Mm-hmm. And really, I spend a lot of my time in that area there, with that risk management, helping dentists and dental assistants for that matter, to identify, hey, what's in my best interest and the best interest of my patient. And the next question is, okay, is this decision legal? Right. And that's where the compliance aspect comes in. Mm-hmm. So compliance could be compliance with rules and regulations, or it could be following guidelines, such as like the CDC guidelines for infection control.
Right.
They're not laws per se, but there are a set of recommendations that we should follow. So
Absolutely. So I really need everybody to understand who are the members of the dental team who would be affected by compliance and how.
Truly everybody. Mm-hmm. So there's a multitude of different rules and regulations. And there's patient privacy requirements. Mm-hmm. I'm sure many states or many countries have that as well. I realize this is an international listenership here, but many states have something about patient privacy and respecting those privacy and having certain safeguards in place to ensure that. There's infection control guidelines that people need to follow to make sure that we prevent the spread of infection. Many countries, many states have requirements for licensure to ensure that you meet the qualifications to be able to do your job, that you have adequate training to meet those requirements. So there's a little something in this for everybody in the dental practice. Not necessarily just people who have a dental license. So
mm-hmm. I think it is so important to underscore that team, because that fact that it's the whole team. Right? Infection control, whose responsibility is that? The entire team. That's Data protection, whose responsibility is that? It's the whole team. Whatever we need to do to ensure that we protect the privacy and support each other in treating and caring for our team is everybody's responsibility. So thank you for underscoring that, Dee. And that's international.
I am passionate about that very thing. I have a side business that I also do medical emergency training in the office with the dentist and their team.
Right.
And my idea behind that is the dentist is only as good as the weakest person in the practice. And that may be a dental assistant, that may be the new girl that we hire at the front desk with no experience, right out of high school, perhaps. If we can build a level of competence for everybody else that supports that dentist, it'll make that dentist more competent when an emergency happens. So I spend a lot of time doing skills training and working with the dental assistants one-on-one, as opposed to just the dentist. So
I have to go and check to see if there's a bug in my office, because I swear you are saying what I say to my team all the time. A chain is as strong as the weakest link. So everybody in my office, whether you work in the front or back, you're going to be trained with everything. There needs to be cross-training, because you never know, right?
That's right.
And somebody in the front can help someone with compliance, infection control, or whatever in the back, or somebody in the clinical area can, nudge the front office person who may be, towing the line with data protection. Everybody has to hold everybody accountable. So a chain is as strong as the weakest link. I love that. and I'm going to check for the bug.
Yeah, well, there you go. So maybe I should check and see if I can trademark that. No, feel free to use it. And I love that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of favorite sayings, but one of them is, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, but rather we fall to the level of our training. And I find that so many people are so resistant to the idea of doing training. It's like, I know all this, or I know everything. I'm God's gift to dentistry. And it's like, no, you know what? You're not.
Yeah.
No more than I'm God's gift to compliance. I'm just a tool. But there's a lot of things I don't know. There's a lot of things that I can improve upon, just like everybody that I work with.
Right.
And and I see that play out time and time again.
Yeah.
So dig in, train hard, train like it's the real thing. And, you know.
Yeah, because you see, when you are well prepared, you're not scared. You jump into mode because you have done it over and over. You've heard it over and over. And so there's no fear because you are actually operating on instinct, because you've drilled down, you've talked about it, you've shared. If somebody comes to question your office, you got it. So it really makes a big difference. Thank you for sharing that. Now, for the benefit of the international audience, can you share a little bit about HIPAA, what it is, and how it fits in this puzzle of compliance?
So HIPAA is the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. And the major part of it that we need to know in the context of this conversation here is that we have information about our patients that the public doesn't need to know, that nobody but us and our patient need to know. And, with cyber threats, with, having paper records and people in our practice that don't need to see those paper records, we need to have certain safeguards in place to make sure that only the people that need to have access to and see that information can and do. And specifically that those that don't need to have access to that can't and don't.
Right.
And so it really is largely a framework around protecting the patient's privacy.
And that is so important in today's day when it's so easy to send a text or an email. And you think in terms of convenience, it's just a text or just an email. But we have to be mindful that people can access our data and use them for reasons that are not helpful to us or our clients. So data protection, key. No matter where you are in the world, right?
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So, Mr. Tooth Cop, what are 3 mistakes that are common in most dental offices?
I'm going to go with number 1 is this. No matter how close the office is, no matter how close the dentist is with the staff and vice versa, there are always things that the two will never say to one another.
Yes.
So I would say problem 1 is find a way to bridge that gap to make sure that you can truly communicate effectively. There's a number of different reasons why people won't cross that barrier. With the staff, it's because they want to protect their doctor. With their doctor, it's because they don't want to look weak in front of their staff. But that causes a hindrance in communication and relationship with one another. So I would say that's definitely a top 3. Another one is complacency. I think hands down. We go to work every day. Everything's hunky-dory. Everything's fine. Nobody gets hurt. There's no problems. Nobody's privacy gets violated. And we just get in this mode of just feeling comfortable. And we get sloppy, and maybe we get really sloppy. And that sloppiness gets so sloppy that we don't realize just how inappropriate and how off point we are, how dangerous the situation is in the practice that we've created, because we just have this idea that it's never going to happen to me. Bad things will never happen here because we're just good people, and bad things only happen to other people. And, that unfortunately, that's why I see sometimes people getting needle stick injuries. And, that's why we see things like, sedation related emergencies and patient deaths in dental offices, because people, this isn't a one-time thing. It's a culmination of something that's been going on for a long time, that it just finally just kind of caught up to you, and bam, there it is. Yep. I think I struggle off the top of my head to come up with a third one, because those 2 are pretty poignant.
good communication, compliance, even if things seem quite relaxed and everything seems to be running smoothly, you just never know. Be prepared.
Yeah, be prepared. In ABL, always be learning.
Oh,
you don't know everything, and I sure don't know everything, but
right.
Seek to learn that which you don't know, and
ABL, I love that. So if an office has holes in their level of compliance, what would be the best or most effective way to begin the road to becoming compliant? What's the low-hanging fruit that maybe we could start with first that would get us on our way to where we ought to be?
So there's clinical rules and regulations that we have to follow, and there's non-clinical rules and regulations. I think step one is to find out what rules apply to your practice,
right,
and get clarity on that. Oftentimes I find that people misunderstand and disregard rules thinking that they don't apply to the practice, only to find out that they really do.
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, find out what rules and regulations you have to comply with, and then do your research and figure out most, at least stateside here, they're pretty good about publishing government regulations and guidelines. It's an easy internet search if you know what you're looking for, but reach out to other people, talk to other practices and find out, hey, what do you guys do for compliance, and find out what areas they have compliance measures in place. And that can be helpful sometimes, but again, you've got to do your own research and make sure that sometimes other people do the wrong thing, not realizing they're doing the wrong thing.
Right.
So, monkey see, monkey do.
Right.
Just make sure if you do that you're following the right monkey and doing the right things, and
yes,
specifically not doing the wrong things.
Right.
It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it can be done.
Mm-hmm. So we should never operate in isolation. Be aware of what's happening around you, and we should for sure do our research to make sure that whatever the guidelines are in our jurisdiction, we understand what they are and we can make steps to move in that direction.
Yeah, I think having community with other people in your area is really important.
Okay, so Mr. Tooth Cop, what is one of the most memorable experiences that you've had on the job? Maybe something just unbelievable or very funny. Can you think of anything offhand?
Well, let me share something with you that really touches my heart.
Yes.
I'm in Texas, and in Texas, over a period of time, we had a lot of sedation-related patient deaths. So the state came in 2018 and enacted some new requirements for dental offices that had been, even if they only administer nitrous and or any other level of sedation or anesthesia, that they have to have certain things in place, certain equipment. They have a pre-op sedation checklist. They have to have written policies and procedures in place in order to adequately prepare for and care for a patient having a medical emergency. So shortly thereafter, 2018, 2019, I was working with a client doing my compliance thing. Mm-hmm. And the doc said, hey, my schedule kind of fell apart. And I said, no worries, doc. I'll tell you what, let's use this time. Let's just see how prepared we are, that if we had an emergency today, how ready are you guys? And the doc said, that's a really good idea. So we gathered the team together in kind of like their open bay or their hygiene area. And we made up a scenario, and everybody had a role and a responsibility and something that they were supposed to go and do in order to act out the scenario. Right. And nobody knew what to do. Everybody had a responsibility, but nobody knew what it was. They were supposed to gather certain medical equipment and bring it to the patient chair side. They didn't bring a lot of the equipment. What they did bring, a lot of it was broken, damaged, expired, dead batteries. And the situation just went really poorly. And we kind of paused. Everybody was embarrassed. The doctor was really upset, more embarrassed than upset. But before I had a chance to put everything back together, two of the staff members were so embarrassed, they just left. They got in the car, went to lunch. I'm out of here. I can't deal with this. Doc was really disappointed, went in his office, closed the door. And I thought, wow, just what happened here?
Right.
And so I gathered my things up, and I thought, man, I gotta just say goodbye. So I knocked on the doctor's door. And I said, hey, it's Tink. And he goes, Tink, I love you, man, but I don't want to talk about this. I was like, I know you don't, but I want to tell you something probably not what you're thinking. Doc, I've seen your heart. You have this amazing heart of compassion, of love, of excellence, of their commitment to high standards and patient care. And what I saw out there was a mismatch from the vision that I have of you in my head. And I said, I love you and I believe in you. I know that you're going to take and do right by this. Mm-hmm. And I just left it at that. And in my mind, he was bawling his eyes out when I left, but I don't know what actually happened. Mm-hmm. I left. 4 months later, I get a text message from him. And I thought the timing is just really odd in this time. So I called him and he finally picked up and said, "Hey, are you okay?" He said, how did you know, man? Yeah, something happened. Turned out they were doing a sedation on a patient, and they did their pre-op workup, looking for any red flags, looking for any reason not to do sedation on this patient, and not finding any. They proceeded. This patient immediately had a serious medical emergency, and they ended up starting CPR on this person, and it went really well. They called 911. The ambulance came out, picked up the patient. When the ambulance arrived, the patient was awake, was sitting up, and by all appearances was looking good. By the time I called him, he just got off the phone with the emergency room physician, and the physician said, "You know what, the patient's going to be okay. We're going to keep this patient overnight, but this patient is going to be okay." And he said, "Tink, I just want to tell you, this patient is alive today because you didn't accept good enough."
Right.
I'm like, wow, that is just so beautiful. And I tell that story over and over and over. And it wasn't until a few months ago that I could even tell that story without just getting choked up myself, you know?
Yeah.
We have this idea that, it'll never happen to us. And then when it does, we're still in disbelief. But he said, after that day, we trained and trained and trained because you affected me. And so when this happened this morning, we were ready, and that girl's life depended on it. And I'm so glad. And I'm like, I could retire now and be happy with that story, but I'm on fire. I'm on to the next thing. See if I can make a few more stories like that before I do actually retire.
But what I love about that story is everybody listening. Because with the best of intentions, there are gaps that we have all around us. We just have not been tested enough to know that they are there.
Right.
And I love that he took the negatives and filled in the gaps. So the next time, that wasn't a drill, that was the real thing. They were ready. And that's all you would ever want to see, that if we identify gaps, people don't get in their feelings, but they do what they need to do so they're properly equipped for an emergency. That really was a story that I think many people will remember for a very long time. Thank you for sharing that one.
Absolutely. It touches my heart every time I share it, and I just feel so passionate.
I can understand.
Don't assume that bad things won't happen to you, because Murphy's Law.
Exactly.
What can go wrong will, and Murphy is alive and well in dentistry, unfortunately.
That's right. So you said something earlier that I'm going to ask you to underscore again, because as we've come to the end of this interview, and let me tell you, you dropped some pearls here today. I mean, I'm sure that folks are going to listen to this over and over again. You made a quote earlier that I want you to repeat again because it was so profound. Do you remember the quote?
Yeah, we don't rise to the level of our expectation, but we fall to the level of our training. So train like it's the real deal. Train like your life depends on it.
Yes. Doesn't that story just underscore that quote?
100%.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I have one request of you.
What's that?
That you will come and share with us on another occasion.
Yeah, if you'll have me back, I'd love to come back.
I hear everybody saying a resounding yes, bring him back.
Look, I have a very special place in my heart. And one of the things that I'm always throwing down with dental assistants is, hey, so why are you here? Why are you a dental assistant? You're going to be a dentist one day? And every once in a while, I have a dental assistant say, I want to be a hygienist, or, I do want to be a dentist. I had one a couple weeks ago. I want to be an orthodontist. And I said, you know what? don't let anybody take that away from you. You go get it. You go do that, because you absolutely can. And I believe in you if nobody else does. And they're like, oh, thank you. I'm like, you just, you know, if you don't believe in yourself, find somebody who will believe in you for you until you can believe in yourself.
That's right.
There you go.
Right. That is right. Thank you so much. Well, our tooth cop gave us some gems today. We have to remember that compliance is an act of following rules and regulations, or, following guidelines. Remember, just because you can do something doesn't mean that it's in the best interest of the team or your patients. Every member of the team is affected by compliance. It might be data protection. It might be having the right training for licensure or infection control guidelines. There's so many different aspects to compliance. And we have to always drill down to the fact that the dentist is only as strong as the weakest team member trained. So everybody needs to be up to scratch. Remember that acronym HIPAA? HIPAA is a framework around protection of our patients' information. And another salient point that our tooth cop made is open communication is key among the doctor and the team. We can't afford to be complacent either. It can lead to sloppiness, which could be an ultimate danger to our clients. And remember, ABL, always be learning. Know what the rules and regulations are for your jurisdiction, and don't operate in a vacuum. See what other dental offices are doing, but most of all, do your research to make sure that your office is compliant. And listen, that story underscores the need for us to make time to run the play. Having a patient emergency drill could save a life, as we heard in that story. And finally, here is what you're going to underscore. We don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. Exclamation mark. Listen, I know you're going to listen again and pull out some salient points. Life is better when we live, learn, and grow together. Subscribe to any of the platforms, or please listen to us on our website. And we will see you the next time.